Today we're going to be talking about compounds, the formation of compounds basically. So this is compounds. So how are compounds formed, or what are compounds? So compounds occur when two or more atoms combine into a pure substance. These can be broken down into their constituent atoms. In chemical reactions, the atoms of the reactants interact to form new substances. The reacting species are called the reactants, and those are produced are products. So reactant and products can be either elements or compounds. Compounds are held together by chemical bond. So welcome to Edu-ca-te. Today I'm going to basically introduce what a compound is. So as it says that two atoms combine. Suppose we've got an atom of sodium. Remember that an atom is the smallest building block of matter. So the atom of sodium is basically the smallest building block of sodium. So a sodium atom combining with a chlorine atom. So this is basically the structure of the compound formation reaction. So this is a reaction. So you can see this is a sodium plus chlorine giving you sodium chloride. So you can see this is the formation of a compound. So here you can see we've got elements. You can recognize these elements by just rewinding to the periodic table. By rewinding to the periodic table, we can actually see the value for sodium. So where is sodium? Sodium is situated in period number 3, group number 1. Here it is. Here it is. So here is sodium. So sodium is an element. So the atom of sodium can react with other elements to form a compound. So a compound is a combination of atoms basically in a specific ratio. So let's just break down the term and then write it down. Okay, so a compound is basically the combination of atoms in a specific ratio. So what do we mean by a specific ratio? So a specific ratio is basically the amount of atoms which are needed to form a compound. So that's a ratio. So in this case, we have got one of sodium atom, we've got one of chlorine atom, here we've got one sodium, one chlorine. So you can see actually that we've got one sodium here, one chlorine atom here, there were one sodium there in the products, and then one chlorine atom in the products as well. So that is the basic specific ratio. It's just like a recipe of cooking something. You are not going to put more than the required. So the required products or the required ingredients to make that product are always the same. For example, you are supposed to cook porridge, and then you need 2 cups of millimils. Where immediately when you put 3 cups of millimils, then it all becomes wrong. It will not give you the product which is desired. So let's kind of analyze what are the reactants and the products. So this side basically is called the reactants. So these are the reactants. By the reactants are these elements that are reacting with each other to form a product. So therefore this is called the product. So the product is formed by one or more reactants. So here you are combining an atom of sodium and an atom of chlorine here to form a product which is sodium chloride. So this is now a compound which has been a result of a combination of 2 or more atoms at this ratio, which is 1:1. So it means we've got 1 sodium, 1 chlorine to form 1 sodium chloride. So that's how it is. So that's basically how compounds are made. So they are actually let's go back to the statement that says that The reacting species are called reactants. So we've already analyzed that. Okay, it continues and say that compounds are held together by chemical bonds. So there are certain chemical bonds that hold those compounds together, because we might ask exactly what is combining all of this. Like, it's a combination. How do they tend to combine two different things? So it's certain chemical bonds that are actually holding these together. So let's look at the difference between let's take a compound and an element. In terms of symbolism, you can see here we've got CO and we've got CO. So you must be very careful when you are writing down the symbols of compounds and elements, because they are almost similar. There are many similar compounds and elements, and they will actually seem like the same thing, but actually no. So here, this compound is a combination of carbon and oxygen. We can observe that from the periodic table. You can see this is carbon over here, this is oxygen over here. So it's a combination of carbon and oxygen to form carbon monoxide. So this is called carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide. So this carbon monoxide is formed of carbon and oxygen. Note that this is capital letter C and this is capital letter O. Never make a mistake and write it in this form, C and a small o, because it becomes something else that is not exactly the same thing. So you can see that the first letter of an element must be capitalized. So the first letter. So you can see here, if we're going to take this C and look at this C, all of them are capitalized. It means they are capital letters, but then the following letter determines if it's a compound or it's an element. So you can see that CO, which is carbon monoxide, is a compound which is comprising of carbon and oxygen over there. And then in this case, we've got carbon, we've got cobalt. This is an element cobalt. We can actually find it in the periodic table. Element cobalt, element number 27 here. This is cobalt. So you can see that the difference here is only the capitalism of the letters. You can see here, this was a capital letter O, because oxygen is capital letter O, not the smaller letter O. And there's no other element which you'll find with a small letter. All of them are capitalized. So oxygen is capital letter O. And then in this case, every compound, you cannot have a compound which have got a capital letter first and then a small letter. No, this becomes wrong. This is not a compound, because each and every element is capitalized. Therefore, if you find out that you've got a capital letter and a small letter, therefore you already know that this is an element. This is all one thing, just like helium. And also another hint, you never find any element which will have two capital letters as its symbol. So supposedly you have got this alleged element He. This is not an element helium. No. So if it's an element, the first letter is capitalized. If it has got a second letter in its symbol, it is written as a smaller letter. We can observe that by actually going back to the periodic table and seeing many formats of writing it. You can see here, element number 55, the CS has got a capital letter C and then a smaller letter S. And then the FR 87 has got a capital letter F and a small letter R. The 88 is the same thing, same over and over again. You never find two capital letters in one element. So you must take note to differentiate if this is an element or a compound. Therefore, once you see, this is a hint, once you see something like this, then it means that this is a compound, because you've got two capital letters. So if there are two capital letters, so it means it's not an element, it is a compound, just like carbon monoxide, which has got a capital letter C and a capital letter O. Therefore, you must be very careful at exactly how you name it. So supposedly they say this is hydrogen, of course, and then they say this is X. This is unknown. So you have to determine what is this element. It can be chlorine, it can be fluoride, it can be anything. It can be anything. So immediately when you see two capital letters as a symbol, just know that this is symbolizing a compound and not an element.